Welcome, everyone, to Phillies Extra, the baseball show from the Philadelphia Inquirer. I'm your host, Scott Lauber, and I'm thrilled to be joined this week by my guest, Larry Bowa. You know, one of the things that we set out to do when we launched this show last month is to interview a wide variety of people. We wanted to invite current players, and we had Kyle Schwarber last week and JT Realmuto the week before, but also coaches, executives, former players, and more. And one of the many great things about having Larry Bowa is that his career in baseball spans multiple roles and pretty much every generation. So if you're at least my age, I'm 48, or older, you probably remember Larry from at least some stage of his 16-year Major League playing career. He was a 5-time All-Star, a Gold Glove winning shortstop, and of course, a key member of the Phillies' first World Series championship team in 1980. If you're a little bit younger than me, you might know him as the third base coach for the 1993 Macho Row Phillies, or maybe even as the Phillies manager from 2001 to 2004. And if you're too young to remember any of that, you know Larry still is a daily presence around the team. At age 79, he's an advisor to the front office, a sounding board for manager Rob Thompson, a helping hand for infield coach Bobby Dickerson, and really whatever else the Phillies need him to be. If it's spring training, guess where he is? Yep, on the field in Clearwater, working with young players, helping the staff. Last year, he even dropped everyone's jaw by banging a hole-in-one in the organization's annual golf outing. Because he has done everything in the game, he brings a perspective on so much. And if you know anything about Larry Bowa, he brings strong opinions too. He was gracious enough to sit down with me this week. So without further ado, let's get right to it, my conversation with the one and only Larry Bowa. Larry Bowa, welcome to Phillies Extra. Thanks so much for doing this.
My pleasure, Scott. We're having a good spring training so far, and looking forward to this season to start really soon. It's going to be on us before we know it.
It sure is. I was there for 2 weeks. I'm trying to steal a few days at home, and I know that it's been a quiet camp and a productive 2 weeks. And if my math is right, and I'm a sports writer, so, you know, give or take. But I think this is spring training number 60 for you. Is that correct?
Yeah, I got a lot of them.
Yeah,
I'm starting to lose track, but as long as I feel good, the Phillies have let me come, John Middleton, and of course, our manager, Rob Thompson. You know, if they're allowing me to do this, you know, I have a lot of fun with it. I get to meet the young kids and talk to the veterans, and you know, Dave Dombrowski said he's all in with me coming. So I've had a good time. I've been very lucky health-wise. As long as I can keep doing this, I'm going to try to keep doing it.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, you know, so, I mean, everyone knows your resume and they know your story. Signed as an undrafted amateur after the 65 season and Major League debut in 1970. Played with the Phillies through 81, won the World Series in 1980, retired after 85, and you've managed and coached and worked as an advisor and done pretty much everything you could do in the game. And I was going to ask you, you know, after all these years, what makes you keep going? Obviously, the Phillies love to have you back, but, you know, people in your position who've done everything you've done probably wouldn't be there every day, putting in the time and the energy and the effort and working with the young players. Something must, you know, make you want to do this every single year. And you're not just there for a week. You're there the whole time.
Right. You know, baseball's been my life. You know, ever since I've been growing up, my dad played AAA. I've been around baseball for a long time. And like I said earlier, as long as I'm healthy and I can keep helping out, I don't want to just hang out and walk around. I mean, I hit fungos and help Bobby Dickerson. You know, we have fundamentals we talk about in there. It's just a good atmosphere. And I really believe that if you're getting older, up in age, and you're around younger guys, it makes you feel good. And we have some good young players in camp right now. And I think our farm system's the arrow's starting to point up. So I think there's a lot of good things happening with the Philadelphia Phillies. Of course, obviously, with the big club, we got to get this thing done. We've come up short. You know, as you well know, Scott, the window is only open for so long. And we've gotten opportunities. We just haven't taken advantage of them. And we've come up short, especially the last couple of years.
So I always say you're probably the easiest person to find in Phillies camp because all you got to do is head over to the half field in the morning, and there you are, usually with a fungo bat in your hand next to Bobby Dickerson, and you're hitting those ground balls. And someone I've been eager to ask you about since camp started 2 weeks ago is Aidan Miller. He's the youngest player in camp. He's 21 years old. 2 years ago, this time he was in high school. He's a first-round pick. He's in big league camp for the first time, and you've been around him now for a few weeks. What's been your impression of Aidan from working with him?
First of all, he's been very impressive, very intelligent for a young kid. I'm sure he's a little bit in awe in the locker room, but he doesn't show it. He's here to learn. And if you talk to him, you'd say, man, this guy's been playing baseball or being invited to big camps for the last 5 or 6 years. This is his first big league camp, and he's handled himself unbelievable. He's got great tools. People ask me, do I think he can play short? I've watched him last year. I've watched him this spring. I definitely think he can play short. And I don't know what the plans are down the road. I do think that this year he will be playing short. I think he's starting out in Reading. And if things progress like I think they're going to progress, there's a good chance he could be in AAA before the end of the season. And but for a kid to come out of high school and be as mature as this kid, he's been very impressive. His work ethic is off the chart. He's got a good arm. He's got good hands. I'm very impressed the way he swings the bat, uses all fields. It was a big-time pickup for us to draft this individual, and I think he's going to have a great career, whether it be at short, whether it be at third. He's going to be in the big leagues playing somewhere, and it's just a matter of where they want to put him. But I think this year they're going to definitely start him out at shortstop in Reading. Yeah,
that's been what we've been told by Dave Dombrowski, is that he's going to stay at short. And it's funny because after the draft in 23, you talk to some scouts from other teams, who kind of wondered whether his future will be at third base, whether he'll have to move eventually. You think he can stay at short? Why do you say that? Just the athleticism and the movements out there?
I see the range. I see the arm. I see his intelligence. He's got a good baseball mind. He's got good hands. He swings the bat exceptionally well. And again, we got Trea Turner, who's here for a long time. So I have no idea what the plans are in the future, barring any injuries. Hopefully Trea stays healthy because Trea's an outstanding player. I've had a philosophy that if a guy's good enough, he's going to find his way into the lineup, whether it be the position he wants to play or another position. When you have this kind of talent, it's just a matter of time before he's in the big leagues, in my opinion.
Yeah, speaking of shortstops and Trea Turner, he came into camp last spring, and he was really focused on his defense. I think he was pretty candid about feeling like he didn't have a good defensive season in 23, wanted to be better. I thought his defense was better last year. The metrics still were not real kind to him. What's been his focus with you and with Bobby so far this spring about what he wants to do with shortstop this year and how he wants to improve upon what he did last year?
Well, I think the big thing is he wants to improve his first step. This guy's got tremendous tools, great hand-eye coordination when he's hitting. He's got good hands. He's got a good arm. Sometimes he gets, I call it stuck in mud, where he doesn't keep the feet moving and the ball plays him, basically. I think, I'm not saying that Trea is the best shortstop in the National League, but I will say he's not where they're ranking him. He's down towards the bottom according to the rankings. And I think that fielding percentage in the big leagues is the most flawed stat, and the way they go about it. And I shake my head because I see players that they rank above other players, and my eyes tell me, my experience tells me there's no way this happens. So I don't think the numbers justify it. I think he's a better shortstop than they basically, I think someone told me he was like near the bottom, the last 4 or 5 guys near the bottom. And I don't look at it that way. I think he's a much better shortstop than that. And again, I don't think he's the best, but I don't sit there when I watch games and say, please don't hit the ball to Trea. I have all the confidence in the world in this guy. And I think sometimes he goes into a little funk offensively, and maybe it affects his fielding a little bit, or his concentration, I should say. But this he's the real deal. He's got a chance to be an MVP. The way he plays the game, I expect him to steal more bases this year. I don't know how the lineup's gonna go with Rob. Their experiment. I know today in Toronto, against Toronto, he led off. So I don't know what's down the road. We got a lot of games left, and I'm sure Rob's gonna flip that lineup around a few times and eventually come up with something that he feels comfortable with. It could very easily be the same one as last year, or it could be changed. So those are decisions that Rob and the coaching staff and Dave make before the season starts. But it's a good problem to have. There's a lot of talent on this team. And I've told people before, if this group of guys don't win a World Series, for me, it would be very disappointing because I see a lot of talent in there, pitching-wise, bullpen-wise, starting lineup-wise. I just like the makeup of this team. I like the way Rob Thompson and his coaching staff handle it. I expect big things out of them this year. I really do.
I have a batting order question for you in a moment, but just to follow up quickly on Trea, when the Phillies signed him a couple of years ago, you and I talked, and I'd done a little bit of research about kind of the aging curve of shortstops. I don't know if you remember the conversation, but like I mentioned to you that like I found it surprising that everyone knows the older you get, the harder it is to continue to play 100 or more games a year and play every day. But I went back to 1972, and there were less than 50 shortstops who had played 100 or more games in a season at age 32. Trea's going to be 32 this year. And I thought that was a really low number for that amount of time. And I think you agreed with me. You were a guy who played 100 plus games every year until you were, through your 38 season. Is Trea, we all know what kind of an athlete Trea is. Does Trea in your mind have kind of the makeup, the athleticism to kind of beat that aging curve a little bit? Or what's going to be the most challenging thing for him to stay at shortstop as he gets into his middle 30s?
Yeah, I think he can beat that as far as games played. He's got a great body. He's got tremendous speed. He's got a good arm. Each guy's different. You might have another guy, 32, that you're saying, oh, this is his last year. I don't see that with Trea. I see Trea playing a long time here. He takes care of himself. I think the biggest thing with playing every day now is they have workloads, not just the Phillies, everybody in baseball, and they make a note if a guy's playing a lot of games in a row, they sit him down. I'm not all in on that, but obviously they're doing it for injuries and prevent injuries. I like guys that play every day. I watch Atlanta Braves up until last year. Their lineup goes out there every single day. Every now and then they'll give a guy a rest. If you got a good solid lineup, which I think our lineup is good, is that's solid, I'm playing these guys. And I know the dog days get here in August and you need a blow. It's 100 degrees. The humidity's high. But I think Trea's the kind of guy who's in great shape. I think he can play for a long time. And again, is he going to play short the whole time under his contract? I don't know. But I don't see him moving anytime soon. I really don't.
So the great thing is I can ask you about playing shortstop. I can ask you about managing and putting together a batting order because you've done that plenty of times in your career. And, the batting order is a topic of conversation as usual. It feels like every year we talk about it. And my contention is at the end of the day, it doesn't matter a whole heck of a lot because for as much as people talk about who should lead off and where should Bryce bat and whatnot, I think I've always thought that if you have the right guys in the general right pockets of the lineup, right, you want your best hitters to come up as often as possible. So whether it's Schwarber, Turner, Harper, or Turner, Harper, Schwarber, or whatever it is, you're still going to score around the same number of runs, no matter what that order is. And I wonder, when you were a manager, how much time did you spend on the batting order in general, on thinking about those spots individually, or more as a grouping, right? Like it's a puzzle and you want to make sure you have the right guys hitting before and after one another in different areas of the lineup.
I think that's important. I think guys like to know who's sitting in front of them, who's sitting behind them. And of course, you're going to have some games where you face a guy like Sale for Atlanta, and he's very difficult to hit from the left side. So you might switch that lineup a little bit. But for the most part, I think these guys like to know where they're hitting, who's hitting behind them. Does that mean it's etched in stone? No. I mean, if your team goes cold for a week and don't score runs, obviously the manager tries to shake things up and move a guy here or move a guy there. But for the most part, if you ask these guys, they want to bat in the same order. They want to know who's pitching. They want to know who's hitting in front of them, what the guy throws to certain hitters. And again, but analytics have taken over baseball, not just with the Phillies, all over. And sometimes they'll put in the lineup and they'll say, hey, this lineup looks like it matches up better. I didn't have to deal with that. I basically looked at individuals, and I could tell when a guy needed a day off, or maybe a guy was struggling. I said, hey, look, come in tomorrow, just relax, don't even hit, don't take ground ball, just rest. And then you get back in there the next day. But because the analytics have taken over and teams are paying analytic people a lot of money, they rely on those a lot. Personally, I like gut feeling. I like what my eyes tell me. I think Rob Thompson can do the same thing. Rob's the kind of guy that takes the information and they basically say, if you want to use it, fine. If you don't, and I think that's how Rob does it. And but you get guys that hey, they get a little sensitive when you start. If a guy goes 0 for 8, now all of a sudden you're moving from the 3 hole to the 7 hole. They're saying, what? I guess he doesn't believe I can hit there. So you got to be careful. I think it's a tenuous situation. You got to believe in your players, and I like the set lineup. Like I said, every now and then you might platoon or give a guy a blow and let your extra men play, get some at bats, because over the course of 162 games, you're going to need your extra men. You're going to need those guys to play. So you can't just well, that's my dog right there. Unbelievable. So, but I hope that didn't mess up this.
No, you're good.
Okay, but again, it's a different generation now. I know when I played, Schmitty hit third, Bull hit fourth. We very seldom deviated from that. Sometimes I would hit second, sometimes I would hit eighth. That didn't bother me. I think it bothers guys in the middle of the lineup more so than a guy that's a singles hitter, hits steals bases and things like that. You can insert a singles guy anywhere in the lineup, but those big power hitters, they like to come up with men on base. And there's no doubt in my mind that Harp and Schwarb and JT and Casty, all those guys, they like coming up to see 2 or 3 guys on. And that's the big issue right now. You brought it up earlier. Is it more important for Schwarb to hit with the bases loaded, or is it more important for him to get in there the first inning and hit one in the seats? We've been pretty successful. When I say successful, as far as wins and losses, we haven't gotten to where we want to go yet. But somebody has to explain to me, say, oh, that lineup will never work. It's worked, but I think what they want to do is add a little more speed at the top. And again, it's an experiment. It could go by the wayside, or you might see the first game against Washington, you might see Schwarb leading off. So those are decisions that Rob and Dave and the coaching staff have to make, and I'm sure they're going to look at different lineups through the course of these next, 20, 25 games that we play.
Yeah, we were talking the other day about speed guys too, and maybe sometimes a guy is more likely to run if like let's say Trea's on first base, and Trea was saying, look, there might be times where I think this would be a good time to go, but I don't want to take the bat out of Bryce's hand. And if I run, they're going to walk Bryce because I just opened first base. So maybe separating them in the order unlocks a little bit of Trea's speed. That's what I mean by kind of like whether you paid more attention to the grouping rather than looking at 9 individual spots and figuring out where someone's got to be.
I think you do pay more attention to the grouping. I think Trea is capable of stealing 60 to 70 bases. But you just made a great point. If he's on first base and he's hitting ahead of Bryce and now he steals, I don't care who's hitting after Bryce. It's no disrespect to whoever's hitting. They're going to make somebody else beat them besides Bryce Harper. So now you open up that can of worms that Turner stole second. They put him on. They put Harp on. And now you got a potential double play. Or, hey, if Schwarb hits behind him, I don't know. Again, he could hit a 3-run homer. I think we have the ability. Those 2 guys in particular, I don't think facing left-handers bother him. I think the biggest thing is Harp would like to hit with men on base, but don't take the bat out of his hands. So that it's a tough situation. It's a situation where Tom's, who's very good communicating with his players, will sit down with all of them and discuss the pros and the cons of, hey, do we want Trea running all the time? I mean, there's some games where you obviously say, Trea, stay put. We're down to run. We want Harp hitting. And there's other games where, hey, you got a 3-4 run lead, say, go ahead, take off. But I think Trea Turner is very capable of stealing 60 bases. And he's the first one last year I asked him about stealing. Of course, he tore his hamstring. He never really felt comfortable. And, when you do have a pulled hamstring, you're always in the back of your mind saying, do I want to push it? Do I want to push it? So I don't think he was hurt, but I think it was in the back of his mind, I do not want to pull this again. So as long as he's healthy, I think he's smart enough to know when to run and when not to run. A lot of guys just run to run. I mean, with these new rules, you get guys that can run, they can steal 70, 80 bases. You know, back when we played, they didn't have this rule you throw over twice, and then other than that, it's a balk. They kept you close, and again, you had to pick your spots. But you know, I just think that we have speed that we can take advantage of. And take a look at Stott. This guy can steal bags. You know, you could put Stott and Trea Turner at the top. You could separate that way. You could go Stott, Trea, Harp, and then after that, who knows? You could go Casty. You can go Schwarb. You can go JT. I mean, there's so many ways. That's what I think this is a good team, because they're so flexible. And I really don't, with the exception of maybe 3 and 4, most of these guys, they're going to go out there and compete. I know Harp likes to hit in the middle, and Schwarb really never says anything. He says, just give me 4 at-bats. So it depends on who you're talking about and who you're talking to. Some guys feel very comfortable. I mean, Harp's been very successful hitting in the 3-hole. There's been talk, do you want to lead him off? There's been talk, do you want to hit him second? So again, these are questions that Rob's going to have to answer. And as I said, he communicates. His communication with the team is very good.
All right, let me wrap it up with this. So it's the 45th anniversary of the Phillies' first World Series championship in 1980. And you and I have talked about this before. When you guys got to spring training that year, you were coming off missing the playoffs in 79 and 3 consecutive NLCS losses in 78, 77, and 76. Can you describe kind of the urgency that you felt that spring to get over the hump finally? And part 2 of that question is, I wonder if you have any sense that there's a similar feeling with this group after coming up short in the postseason the last 3 years.
The first part of your question, there was a great sense of urgency for our team, because Rudy Carpenter, who I thought was one of the best owners with the Phillies, along with now John Middleton, he basically got the core group together before spring training in 80 and said, hey guys, as much as you know how much I respect you and love you to play in the Phillies, if you guys don't go deeper here, I'm going to have to break this team up. That seed was planted in spring training. And as we progressed through the season, none of us forgot that conversation. You know, we came up together, we learned how to lose together, we learned how to win together. And it was something that knocked us together, and it made you think a little bit, saying, man, this could be the last time I play with Schmidt, or this is the last time I play with Bowa or Booney. And it hits home a little bit. And it wasn't from lack of effort. We played 2 teams in those playoffs, the Dodgers and the Big Red Machine. They weren't easy. They weren't easy teams to beat. They had a lot of talent, and whether it be a pitch, a hit, a bad call, whatever it was, we just didn't get it done. And to have that big boulder taken off our shoulders and eventually win the first ever World Series in Philly history, it meant a lot to everybody. It meant a lot to Ruley. It meant a lot to the city. It meant a lot to the players. And do I think this team now feels that? I don't think they remember 80, but I do think they feel that sense of urgency because, again, we've come up short. There have been good seasons as far as wins and losses, but you got to finish the deal, and we have not finished the deal. We have the talent to finish the deal, and I would be disappointed if we don't. Again, injuries play a huge part in this. You got to be good. You got to be lucky. You got to stay away from injuries. You don't want to use 9, 10, 11 starting pitchers. You like to use 5 to 7 during the course of a year. You want your key players to be healthy. So there's a lot that goes into it. But these guys definitely, you hear the chatter in the clubhouse, say, hey, we got to get this done. You know, we come up short here. So they're definitely aware of what's happened here. And I think they want to do something about it. I really do.
Well, anyone who's watching or listening, if you didn't already know, Larry Bowa's got every bit as much energy and enthusiasm as ever before. His knowledge of the game, second to none. Larry, I know these are long days in spring training, so we thank you so much for your time. You're always so gracious with it, and I will see you in a couple of days back down there in Clearwater.
Yeah, you got to get back down here, Scott. You probably left when it was a little. Did you leave when it was raining and everything? Well,
yeah, raining and chilly.
It's about 80 degrees today,
yeah.
So you got to get back down here.
Yeah, I'm hustling my way back down for sure, no doubt.
Yeah, okay. I expect good things this year. I really do. I think this team is ready to make a move. when I say make a move, we've done what we're supposed to as far as winning the division, advancing, but we got to go deeper. We definitely have to go deeper.
Well, Larry, thanks so much for spending a little bit of your time with Phillies Extra at the Philadelphia Inquirer, and I'll see you in a few days. We thank Larry Bowa again for being with us this week. For our Reporter's Notebook segment, I'm solo, so let me run through a couple of things that have stood out to me so far. First, the Phillies dodged a scare the other day when Bryce Harper got hit by a pitch on the back of the right arm. He has a bruised triceps, nothing more, nothing less. But it underscores the most important thing about spring training, and that's health. Because while it's necessary for players, especially pitchers, to get their bodies ready for the season, every team really just wants to get to the end of camp with its roster intact. We've already seen the Mets lose 2 pitchers, Frankie Montas and Sean Manaea. That's 40% of their projected rotation that'll begin the season on the injured list. As it stands now, the Phillies have about 23 of their 26 roster spots locked up. So if the most interesting story between now and March 24th is who bats leadoff, well, that'll be just fine with Dave Dombrowski and Rob Thompson. 2 things I'll be watching for over the next week. First, when does Johan Rojas start playing defense? He tweaked his shoulder on a slide in winter ball and has been a DH so far in Grapefruit League games. The Phillies are saying they're not concerned, but we know that Rojas' strength is his defense. And if he needs more time to get that throwing shoulder ready for the season, he can always go to AAA and get more reps there before coming to the big leagues. That ties into the second thing. How does Edmundo Sosa look in the outfield? The Phillies are more serious about seeing if he can play center field, even center field, but especially left field this spring. They have a need for a righty hitting backup outfielder with Rojas' situation and with Weston Wilson not being ready for the start of the season after straining a muscle in his side. If Sosa is able to be a righty hitting option in the outfield, the Phillies might be more inclined to keep Cody Clemens, a left-handed hitter, for the final bench spot. For our last segment, we call this Hit and Run. And I'd like to take a viewer question this week. This is from David Cylinder, and he asks, the Phillies lost Jeff Hoffman and Carlos Estevez from their bullpen, replaced them with Jordan Romano and Joe Ross. I think this, plus you never know what you're going to get from Jose Alvarado, makes them a lot weaker. Do you agree? David, I do think the Phillies are a pitcher short in the bullpen, but that's okay in March because the bullpen is the most fluid part of a roster. Relievers can emerge unexpectedly. Nobody knew who Jeff Hoffman was at this time in 2023 or Andrew Bellotti in 2022. And if you still need somebody, there are always relievers available at the trade deadline. Dave Dombrowski's been here now for 4 trade deadlines, and at 3 of them, he acquired a late-inning reliever. Estevez last year, David Robertson in 2022, and Ian Kennedy in 2021. Ryan Helsley might be available from the Cardinals before the deadline this year. There are going to be others as well. So there's plenty of time to address the bullpen if, in fact, it turns out to be a weakness. Thanks to David for the question. If you've got a Phillies question, please ask away on X, Blue Sky, Threads, or the social media platform of your choice. I'm on all of them. Please hit me up with a question, and I'll try to answer it on a future show. Finally, a quick programming note. If you've missed our first 3 shows, including my interviews with Cole Hamels, JT Realmuto, and Kyle Schwarber, you can check them out by clicking the Phillies tab on Inquirer.com or going to the Inquirer's YouTube channel. We'd love for you to catch up if you've missed anything so far. That'll do it for this week. Thanks again to Larry Bowa, and thanks to our producer, Angelica Rosari, for helping us put all of this together every single week. Until next week, I'm Scott Lauber. Thanks to everyone for listening, watching, reading, and following along.